If your competitors are saying all the same things you're saying, then it doesn't give prospective customers any reason to choose you.
Stacy Eleczko is a website copywriter and brand messaging strategist for impact-driven brands. She helps small business owners uncover their unique brand story so they can speak clearly and confidently about their brands in a way that connects with their ideal clients and positions them as the go-to solution for their dream buyers.
What would change for you if that problem was solved?
In today's episode, we dive into the ethical way of doing marketing, what the future holds in the age of AI, and most importantly, actionable steps on how you can improve your brand messaging without being pushy or sleazy.
One of my core values is I am anti-BS, anti-shady marketing. There are lots of practices out there that will be persuasive, but they're not necessarily ethical to use.
Hey Stacy, welcome to the Nomad Solopreneur Show.
Hi Gabe, thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure to have you, and can't wait to dive into such an important topic into today's world, especially in the context of AI. I know you're an expert in copywriting and brand messaging, which are two important components of everything marketing nowadays. Briefly, how do you get into this?
I actually started off, I was an educator for a while, and I was looking to shift into another career and couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do. And I saw an ad for a copywriting course, didn't realize what it was. And I started investigating, and I realized really quickly that copywriting had like the skill sets and the interests and the expertise that I could easily transition over from things I had done in the past. And literally just decided I'm just going to start my business. And I did. And so, I used to say it was kind of accidentally it happened, but really it was all about what good copywriting is. Somebody got the right message to me at exactly the right time. And so that was how I launched into copywriting and decided to start off specializing in websites, and found really quickly that my clients were coming to me and were not as clear on what set them apart from the competition, how to communicate their value. And I realized that the underlying issue was brand messaging. So I started just learning everything I could about how to help companies and brands differentiate themselves, and really just fell in love with that part of it. And so it became kind of a perfect thing to marry those two things, brand messaging strategy along with the copywriting.
And for those that are not familiar, what is brand messaging?
So really it's about what is the foundation of your marketing message, right? What is the thing that you most want people to know and understand about your business? And so, it's driven at the very basis by your mission, by your vision, by your values. You have to understand what's happening in the market with your competitors. And then how do you set yourself apart and clearly communicate what that unique value is? So I kind of think about it as, what's the key message? What's the story you want people to know about your brand? And how do people talk about your brand when you're not in the room?
I think that last part it's crucial, because at the end of the day you can present your brand in so many different ways, and you start to differentiate, but the message you put out there, and which is understood by others, it's actually the one that you mentioned. What they are actually saying when you're not there, like how they perceive your brand, how they share stories, good or bad, about your brand. And speaking of that, you mentioned standing out, and it's such a hard act to do so. Almost every market that you enter in is crowded. And how you can identify those pillars that allows you to stand out through brand messaging.
Yeah, well, and I think, it's not going to be the same for every business. Like you said, markets are crowded. I'm not the only brand messaging strategist. I'm not the only copywriter, right? Lots of other people do what I do. And so really you need to figure out, why do people choose you to do the thing that you do? And so I am really always about being obsessed with the market and with your customers. So you need to know, what are your competitors doing in the space? Because sometimes there's an obvious gap that you can fill. But then also, if your competitors are saying all the same things you're saying, then it doesn't give, prospective customers any reason to choose you. So you need to be really aware of that. And then, talk to the customers that you have. That's my favorite way of figuring out, why did you choose to work with me? And they'll tell you right away the thing that sets you apart, or it's what comes up consistently in testimonials. Those are the things that tell me what my clients most appreciate about what I value. It's the same thing that helps me uncover it for my clients. When I look at their testimonials, their reviews, their customer surveys, And, if you are new in business and you don't have that information, then look at what your competitors, what are their reviews? What are their testimonials? What are people saying about what sets them apart? And then you can think about, well, what's something I offer that maybe they're not? Or what's a gap that potentially I could fill here? And, it could be in a service you offer. It could be just in your brand voice. I mean, I tend to be pretty sassy, and not everybody is like that, right? That's going to resonate with some customers and it's going to repel others. And that's okay. I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Um, but you have to really understand like what will resonate with your audience. And so I just sort of think, if you're starting off, play around with seeing what works, what doesn't when you're talking to people, what makes them kind of lean in when you're talking, because you're probably saying something different. And if you're experienced, go back and talk to your past customers and figure out, why did you choose to work with me? So again, it could be services, it could be in your voice, it could be in how you provide the services. What's your process? Like, I'm obsessed with my client's experience. That's really important to me. And that's something that sets me apart in my field. And so those are always the kinds of things that I use when I'm helping my clients with their brand messaging strategy is, what are your customers saying about you? And what does that tell you about how you're either blending in with everyone else or where your differentiators are?
Yeah, true. And maybe it's even best when you do that, when you talk to the customer, to dive even deeper, because sometimes they'll just say, oh, it's it was such a great time to work with you, we got amazing results and all those praisings. But what I advise my clients is to go deeper, like ask deeper question, like what actually didn't go that well, where we can improve, how we can do things differently, or what specifically enjoy the most about working. Like not just, oh, I enjoy a lot working with you, blah blah blah. Go deeper, like specifics, because those are the things that, as you mentioned, if you find similarities and you find a pattern there, those might be the things that differentiate you. And the thing that I love about checking competitors, like you mentioned, is that there are so many underrated ways in which you can find out what they are not actually doing. Even, for example, comments on their social media or in the testimonials they receive. There might be hidden gems there, especially in the testimonials that are not that great. Not the 5-star one, but maybe the 3 stars one, where they actually complain about certain things. And if that complaint repeats itself, again, a pattern that we can dive into. And to be a bit more tactical here, so you advise your clients to put on paper these like values, as well vision and so on. What else, like how else they can find specifically, not only through this and talking with customers, how they can really nail down, okay, this is the thing that I'm is making me stand out in the market.
Yeah, well, so like you said, it starts with the mission, vision, values. And I think that's the key piece that so many businesses skip over because, like, historically, it's been, this dust collector. You write a mission statement, you write a vision statement, you put it away, you never look at it again. And so the first thing, I want to say is, if that's what you've done, go back to the drawing board with your mission, vision, and values, because they should be the absolute North Star for everything you do in your business, not just your messaging, but your systems, your operations, because it's who you are, it's how you help, right? And it's your non-negotiables for your business. And once you have those nailed down, then it goes into that competitor analysis, which is also what every client I've talked to, they're like, yeah, that's kind of the piece I've skipped, or I'm not necessarily so worried about that. But what I've found is that's often where a lot of the aha moments come up, because as I do competitor research for my clients, I'll look through and I'll say, hey, every single one of your clients is talking about these things, but nobody mentioned this one piece. And you said that's really important to you. So that's a differentiator. That's a gap in the market. Um, and so then I think from there, you take those pieces, and that's where you start to craft these statements of, your USP or UVP, your selling and value propositions, right? What sets you apart and why people should care. And most people jump right to doing those things without first figuring out not only, who they are, who they're competing against, and everybody has competitors, Even if you think you don't, people are considering other people. And also, that piece of brand voice. How is it that I want to communicate with my customers? What tone and feeling do I want to project to them? And once you have all of those things, people try to get really granular and start right away with coming up with what are these statements. My suggestion and what I do when I'm working on messaging is I always just jot every single possible thing down that I could think of, and from there just start to whittle it down to, okay, let me go back every single time to these pieces I already did: mission, vision, values, competitor analysis, thinking through how I differentiate myself. And I didn't even mention, really important. I know there's a lot of controversy over like buyer personas. Do we need to do them, not do them? I'm a big fan of them if they're done well, right? When we're looking at psychographics, what are the values? What are the attitudes? What do people really believe? What are their objections going to be? And you've thought about all of that key messaging. What do people need to hear? That's where you put all of those pieces together in order to craft those statements. And then if you already have a customer base, or you have some, favorite past clients that you love more of, send those statements to them and just ask, like, hey, just out of curiosity, I'm doing some market research. Does this hit home for you? Does this resonate with you? And they're happy. I've found so many times, they're happy to just help you with that. I do client interviews as part of my brand messaging for my clients. And whenever I talk to their clients, sometimes I'm the one who's like, hey, I noticed that we're going over time. Do you want to wanting to honor their time? And they're so excited about helping you and talking about your business and what you do that often they'll continue the conversation beyond. And what you said before earlier also just reminded me of, the jobs to be done theory, which I'm pretty much obsessed with. And that is the idea of like, why are people really hiring you? And what you said about it goes way beyond like, oh, I got great results, or she was great to work with. That doesn't really tell me anything. And so really listening, and understanding and hearing what people are saying about you, all of those things combined. That was a really long answer to your question. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's a complex thing, and that's why we need help with these things, because no matter how experienced we are in our business, in the service we provide, if we don't get help in actually nailing down this aspect, because maybe it's the unsexy part of marketing, interviewing past clients or potential clients or checking our competitors and so on, but it's so much needed, as you well said. And I want to touch on two things that you mentioned. One, it's the non-negotiable, and the other will be the client persona, because those are two things like a lot of people omit, and especially non-negotiable. They just say yes to any type of client they come their way. They don't put a clear message out there that this these are the things that I don't go over no matter what, or this is not for you if, or wherever you want to put it. And how do you find those? It's tied to your values, it's tied to the things that the client that you want to work with, or how do we identify those as service providers or coaches, consultants?
Yeah, I always like to start with values, right? Because those are the things that are really core to you and how you want to operate and how you want to do your business. So for me, I mean, one of my core values is I am anti BS, anti shady marketing. There are lots of practices out there that will be persuasive, but they're not necessarily ethical to use. And I'm not going to do that. So if I have a client that wants to work with me and they want me to use tactics that I think are manipulative, then they're not a good fit for me, right? So for me, that's absolutely a non-negotiable. But it then also comes down to, I think some of it is with experience. You start to learn who the clients are that are the best fit for you and who you're the best fit for. And really, you do learn like who this is for and who this is not for. And, one thing I always want to say is I know when you're first starting out, sometimes you have to take clients that maybe aren't the best fit because everybody's got to pay the bills, right? And so, but there has to come a point where you say, I'm not going to take this client because not if it's not a good fit for you, you're not going to be the best fit for them either. And so you really want to think about that client relationship is key, especially depending on, it depends on what kind of business you're into, but it's easier to retain clients than it is to constantly find new clients. And so what you want to do is you want to find those clients that who are these best fit clients for me and for my product or my service so that I can build a really strong relationship with them where it feels aligned for everyone. And so, like you said, I think it really starts with those values. And so you have to identify what's critical for you. What are the things that you will do? And so what I always ask my clients is what are things that you're willing to bend on, right? And what are the things that no matter what, you're not willing to bend on? And then from there, you can start to think of, I always love a this is for you if, this is not for you if section. On anything website sales page because it'll immediately qualify who you should be working with. Not done in a way to be, I've seen that done in kind of a sleazy way, right? Where people make you feel bad about yourself. This isn't for you if you're not willing to put in the time or effort or energy, not that. But sometimes people really don't have that time. So if you don't have the time to put 2 to 3 hours a week into this course, then this is not a good fit for you. So it just really depends, I think, also on the service, on the situation. But for me, it's about how can I feel good about the business I'm in, and what are the things that are going to help continue to grow my business and my clients' businesses.
And you mentioned there's something regarding no BS type of marketing and no sleazy messaging and so on. And I want to go a bit deeper there because a lot of people they don't want to be associated with that, but because some I don't know direct marketing gurus are promoting so well this type of copywriting and so on, they just get inspired or they just use I don't know ChatGPT or whatever AI tool and generate a messaging and a copy for their landing pages or sales pages, whatever. That actually it's exactly that type of approach they want to avoid. If do-it-yourself type of listeners are tuning in right now, how they can avoid that apart from hiring an expert like you, how they can avoid to not come across as sleazy or pushy or you using those type of tactics that they just annoy customers.
Yeah, that's such a good question because sometimes you don't even realize that what you're doing is maybe manipulative. Um, and you're unintentionally using some of those tactics because, like you said, you're seeing everyone else doing it. So, one thing I think, especially if you're DIYing, is every time you write something before you put it out there, step away from it for a little bit before you come back to work on that editing, that revision, right? And when you come back and you're thinking about, okay, I've written this, is this going to resonate with my ideal client? Which I think goes back to, you mentioned the customer persona before. If it's going to resonate with your ideal client, that means it's going to be something that will evoke emotion in them, that will connect with them, that will relate to them without making them feel like crap about themselves. I have seen too many sales pages. I've been in too many calls where the person I'm talking with clearly understands my pain points, but they agitate them to a point where all they've done is make you feel like shit about yourself. Right? And it's terrible, and but it's persuasive. If you make somebody, feel like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. This feels so hopeless. This is the only solution. I must do this thing." That can be coercive. So I think, the first thing is looking for a balance. Absolutely, you need to connect with clients and let them know, I understand your pain, but you have to do it in an empathetic way, not in a, you feel terrible all the time because, and continuing to harp on it. Like, don't kick someone when they're down. So, think about what's that pain point? What is the feeling you want to evoke in someone? And then what's the solution you offer to their problem? I also think when you do that, one thing that I see that a lot of people use in their marketing is they position their solution as the only solution to your problem, right? If you don't do this thing, then you will never get the results that you're looking for. And realistically, that's just not true. There's more than one solution to every problem. And so you can position yourself as an ideal solution to the problem, if you really are, but you're not the only solution. And so I think it's just about things like making sure that you're not saying anything that makes someone feel like coerced into working with you, but something that nudges people, pushes them in that direction of, oh, this person really understands what I'm going through. And I really do feel like they could help me. Um, so those are some, just some things I would think about as you're reflecting on the copy. And then when you sit down to write it, be transparent and be truthful. I got something the other day from someone that it was a PDF, I think, that they were offering. And they were using these crazy scarcity tactics about how, like, this is going to disappear, it'll never be available again. And I was like, wait a minute, I feel like I've seen the same PDF, which, first of all, it's a PDF, right? You can send that to as many people as you want. But I went back and I looked, and I've seen the same person had that same PDF on their website. And so, it's just things like, be truthful, be honest. Scarcity is a great technique if what you're giving is really scarce, if you really have limited seats or limited spots. And not to say you can't limit a PDF, you can. You can say, hey, I'm only going to give this to 50 people or however many, but make sure that's what you're actually doing.
Indeed, because it is so many marketers, and not only marketers, people are putting things out there like limited availability, it's gone tomorrow, but then next week same thing happens again, and so on. And those people are catching up with that. And if you come across as someone that is not trustworthy, how gonna do business with that person again? And you mentioned something there regarding the kind of to not make them feel bad about it. And I think if you manage to agitate their struggles or their problems in a way that they don't feel is their fault of not succeeding, I think that's a good way to position yourself. Because at the end of the day, in most cases, they are not really aware where that problem comes from, what's actually causing that. And often, if you go into the personas, and especially into beliefs, they sometimes believe they have a problem, but in reality, that's not the real problem they are facing. And the classic one, it's almost everyone wants more clients, but that's probably 2, 3, 5% true, because at the end of the day, most people want better clients. They don't have capacity to serve more clients. They just have better clients. Maybe they are paying better, they are having a better experience with them, they can help better, and so on. And speaking of that, like how you address those beliefs and making them think or have that paradigm shift from the problem they think in their head they're having to the real problem they're facing.
Yeah, and that, I would say, is the most common thing that happens, right? Is your clients come to you thinking they want or need one thing, and it really is something else they want or need. So, one thing I do want to address quickly before I kind of talk about how I help shift that thinking is also, so, I mean, if you have a solution that you offer, you're offering it because the problem exists, because it's out there, right? Especially if you've made sure that there's a market for what you're offering. So if you make people feel like, oh, you did this to yourself, or you're the only one, and, I can help you, that's just not true, because you wouldn't be offering your service if lots of people didn't need the solution to that problem. But what I really think about is it's so important to talk to your clients when you're thinking, and this depends, right? I mean, I offer a lot of one-to-one services, so I'm having one-to-one calls with my clients. So in that vein, it's really about questioning and listening to people. So when they say, this is the problem that I'm having, I always ask them, well, and how is that showing up for you in your business? What other problems is that causing? If you could have that problem solved, what would that do for you? And when they start to think through it that way, sometimes there's a shift of, oh, maybe it's a different problem, or I can ask them, well, what are the things you've already tried to address this problem? And sometimes it's something that happened once or twice, and all of a sudden, it's at the forefront of your mind, and so it's this huge problem, when really they start digging in and they sometimes already have the solution. They already know what they need to be doing. And so it's lots of questioning and lots of listening and asking people. I love to ask people, so what, all the time. Like, okay, so what does that mean for you? So how is that really showing up? What would change for you if that problem was solved? Um, what are the things that you're really looking for? And when I work with my website clients, the first thing, one of the questions I ask is, what's the main goal of your website? And usually their first response is, I don't know, I haven't really thought about that before. And so then I'll say, okay, well, what's, the number one desired action you want people to take? And generally they'll say, well, it's booking a call, or it's scheduling an appointment, or buying my course. And then I'll say, okay, so what is it that people need to hear in order to take that action? What are the things you might need to say? Or what are the things you've said before that have been effective at getting people to take that action? And that's usually kind of where the light bulb moment happens for people, where they realize either, oh, I don't know, I'm not clear on that. Right. And so that's where my conversations often shift from, well, maybe you don't need website copywriting yet. Maybe what we need to look at is your brand messaging. And then I can shift and start to ask, are you clear on these things? Do you understand these things? Because I'm not going to write a website for someone that sounds nice, but isn't going to connect with their clients. And if we don't have that brand messaging strategy underlying it, then it's not going to be effective. And so it's the same thing for most of my clients and their problems. What the surface level problem is usually based on something deeper. And if you don't find out what that thing is, you're never going to give them the real solution to what they need.
Indeed, and identifying those, and you basically become some sort of a doctor. Like, you have to diagnose that, the real pain, not just the one that, oh, I just have a headache, but what's actually causing that headache? Because often the reason is much more deeper than surface level problems. And apart from doing interviews and making sure that you really understand your clients, how you can really uncover those. I feel like I'm trying to see if there is a solution beyond interviewing, beyond maybe doing customer research and so on. How we can dive even deeper into this? Like, we can use certain tools, analyze, I don't know, industry reports, or what else can we do in order to make sure that that's the real thing they are facing, not the one that they advertise, or they ask about.
Yeah, because it's not always reasonable, right, to connect with your clients in a level where you interview them. So I'm so glad you asked that. I love to stalk social media. Honestly, I'll say, like, where are your clients hanging out, and go, or your ideal clients, right? The people who you want to attract, where are they hanging out and what are they talking about? So I love to, just hang out in the comments section, and people will ask the questions that they don't know. They have questions, and those questions will often lead to, that's a problem that they might be having in their business. And when you see those same things coming up over and over again, it's a clue that, hey, many people are probably having this issue. What are your competitors talking about? And how is that resonating with people? If everybody is talking about one thing and people are really engaged, then hey, they're probably onto something. And I'm not suggesting that you copy what your competitors are doing, because that's not going to help you stand out, right? But you can figure out, okay, this topic, how do I address this thing? And how can I communicate that? And then get in those conversations, engage in the comments. I screenshot everything. Every time somebody posts something or asks a question or sends me a DM, I screenshot it all the time. And I always go back to those whenever I'm writing my messaging, because that's coming, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. I love Reddit. I go down too many Reddit rabbit holes, so I kind of avoid that one, to be honest, sometimes. But people are honest, and they will say all kinds of things on Reddit and really talk about their problems. So if you know that you are on a subreddit where the people you want to be talking to are hanging out, you have to take it all with a grain of salt because it's behind a keyboard. But a lot of times you can uncover what people are really worried about, what their hesitations are, what their objections are, all those things that you need to address in your copy. So I love looking at your own social media, your customers, or your competitors' social media, Reddit is great. We mentioned testimonials and reviews before. What are people saying about that? Even things like books on the topic of whatever it is that you do. Go look for the reviews. What did people find really helpful about that book? What solutions were they looking for there? And so there's a lot of just kind of behind the scenes online research you can do to figure out, and you mentioned AI before, and I'm no AI expert by any means, but that can definitely be a great tool to feed all of this information into, right? Here are testimonials that were given to me by clients. Here are reviews from clients. Here are things that my ideal clients are worried about. you know what are some pain points they might be having? What are some potential solutions that I could provide for them? How does my service benefit what they do? And start to use that to think about what your messaging could sound like.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And especially when it comes to do it yourself type of approach. Of course, ideally, you should work with someone because there is a certain, like, of course, AI can help. And there are many ways they can help. It can help. But at the end of the day, when you're talking with a human being, you have that human touch. You can be perceived from a different angle that probably an AI tool, at least not yet, is impossible to do it for you. And I want to leverage that because all these, I want to talk about something here because all these things that you mentioned are amazing resources. And indeed, like Reddit or comments, there's so much gold there. But at the end of the day, I think still let's say the number one approach is this, like talking, like actually talking with customers. And someone gave me an example in one of the past episodes in which a friend of his sold his company for almost 1 billion and started a new business. And guess what he did first? He talked with potential customers, 150 of them. The guy had all the resources necessary to put someone else to do that for him, to do all the research and so on. But he actually jumped on a call with 150 individuals and really dive deep into the topic that he was interested in. And guess what? That business value now at 2 billion or something like that, just by addressing heads on the customers and talking with them. It's such an undervalued approach.
It is. Another thing that makes me think about too is when you think about businesses that have marketing teams, often sales and marketing are seen as two totally separate departments, right? And they are, but they have to talk to each other. Your sales team knows your customers. They talk to them all the time. They have an understanding of what are your pain points? What are your problems? What are you going through? And the messaging needs to meet that. And so I think that that's a huge mistake that I see in, smaller to mid-sized businesses is they don't have those conversations with, okay, the sales team knows the customer best. Now, how can the messaging team help the sales team say what they need to say in a way that's going to connect by using that? And when you can talk one on one with them, if you're able to record those calls or jot down that voice of customer language is probably one of the most powerful things that you can use. When you can say it exactly the way your clients say it, that's what resonates. And I think, the other reason that it's important to work with a professional is we're so close to our own businesses. Even when we understand brand messaging strategy and copywriting, sometimes it's hard to see the bigger picture when you're in your business. And sometimes it is harder to think about how can I talk to people who this isn't their wheelhouse, this isn't the thing that they're doing every single day. And so really, we say talking, but really it's listening. What questions can you ask that are going to open people up to talking and just let them talk because they're going to give you all those golden nuggets you need to connect with people.
Absolutely, and like you mentioned, having that outside perspective, and not it's not random that the biggest and most successful individuals or companies out there, they're hiring external help. Like even a popular athlete like Michael Jordan, he had a coach. Like he didn't do everything by himself. He didn't train alone. He didn't because he was not able to see his flaws or his imperfection when it comes to shooting or whatever. And that's true for anyone. Like no matter how good you are, and if you're listening like now and you never ask for help in your life when it comes to your business, and not only business, do it and see the magic happens. And speaking of help, like, do you leverage at this point in any way AI in your business, or you are planning to do so?
I do use AI, so I use it for some. I mean, kinds of things that I talked about before is sometimes once I've done all of this research and I have mission and vision and values, and I've, created these buyer personas, and I'm very clear on competitor research, and I have all of that. Then sometimes I will feed that in, and I'll start to look for, hey, start to categorize this for me. What are trends that you're noticing? What are things that are commonly coming up? And I've done SWOT analysis before on that. I actually ran, this was kind of fun, I did a pretend focus group for a startup because they didn't have anybody that they could talk to, and just feeding in some of those questions. And you have to be really good with prompting it in order to do that. But later, about a year down the road, when they did have clients, we went back and we were like, wow, that was actually pretty spot on, the difference. And I was impressed because a year ago was super new to AI, was super new to everyone. But it was a fun way of doing it. So I do it for things like that. I definitely use it for thinking through a revision process. So when I'm done with my copy and I have gone through and I've thought about, okay, what are the pieces I can cut, shift, change? I'll feed all of that information again back into AI and just say, give me specific feedback on, what pain points does this address for my clients? Talk to me about consistency with tone and voice. And then I get some really great suggestions. Usually, AI will pinpoint the spots where the copy needs tweaking. And then I go back and I do the tweaks on the copy because the output it gives you is generally, like you said, it's not that human touch, right? It sounds artificial. But it can help you pinpoint some of those things where you might be missing this key piece in your copy, or in your messaging strategy. So those are some of my favorite uses for it.
Love them, especially the first one, because nowadays we can end up with so much data that it's almost impossible to see fast where are those patterns, how exactly you can leverage that, and so on. And just feeding an enormous amount of data or to AI and making sure that you get the things and the pieces that you can use the best. It's such an underrated way of using it. And of course, I have a follow-up question with this, because most of those that I'm talking to have a bit of fear regarding this technology, that their services they provide or the expertise can be easily replaced or can be easily taken over by not necessarily AI itself, but of course that someone that is leveraging it, that they have the finances to, I don't know, build an agency and train a lot of these agents or models in order to put out competition. When it comes to you, do you have any fear regarding where the things are going?
I mean, not currently. I think at some point there might be some cause for concern, right, as AI evolves. But right now, I think the tool's only as good as the person who uses it. So, like you mentioned the analogy before of an athlete. Well, Michael Jordan's coach is going to have very different results with Michael Jordan than some, basketball player off the street. And so I think it's about what is your expertise and knowledge with using that tool in the first place? Because if, for example, when I use it to help give me feedback on copywriting, sometimes it gives me garbage feedback. And I'll ask, it's like, oh, thank you for pointing that out. You're right. That wasn't correct feedback. But it's, me understanding what those copywriting principles are in the first place. It's understanding what the key messaging is. And so, it can be a really useful tool, but it doesn't have the capacity to think outside of the box creatively yet. It can only be as good as what's fed into it. And I think it really just takes, there's that human element, understanding of the human condition, of psychology, of story, that is really important piece that I don't think AI can replicate yet.
Unfortunately, that might change soon. At least from what I heard recently, they are close of achieving AGI in probably this year. OpenAI. I read that currently, for example, the most advanced model of ChatGPT, it's around 20 something percent on a benchmark of what AGI can do. And the new model they test right now, and it's not ready to be public, it's around 80 something percent. So a huge leap. And basically, it's almost close to think by itself and without actually feeding any kind of information. So that's the scary part. So that's why I ask, because uh, it feels like a lot of these things that we are doing, and I'm a marketer ourselves, and personally, I'm a bit afraid. And because some of the things that there's still need of human touch, and there are multiple ways we can leverage it in our advantage. But something is telling me that probably this shift, somehow it feels like it's 95, like the internet just got popular and so on, and so many opportunities in the same time. But in the same time, a lot of people are scared and are thinking about what can I do next? And that would be a question for you. What will you do next? In, by any chance, AI will replace you?
Yeah, I mean, that is a great question. And I think it's something I have thought about before. It's, one of the reasons I also focus on the strategy piece of putting all of those different pieces together for my clients as well. So, when I'm thinking about websites or their brand messaging strategies, where does that fit into the overall picture for them? And again, like you said, the advancements are they're really it's wild how quickly those advancements have occurred. But I'm worried, but I'm not as worried in the next, I would say, few years, because the other piece of it is there's so many people who mistrust AI still. So I think it's going to take longer for humans and businesses to fully trust the capacity and capabilities of what AI can do for you. It's going to take longer for that to happen than it will for AI to be able to do those things that will replace us, if that makes sense. So I think that that's the piece, is leaning into that connection. A huge way I've grown my business is by building relationships. By really getting to know people and connecting with them. And I don't know that piece is ever going to go away. Humans and their needs don't necessarily change. And so I think it's going to also depend on by market. There might be writing for mid-market businesses might be impacted sooner than it is maybe working with small business owners who still really care about that human connection, about knowing who they're working with, about having someone that they can reach out to and relate to. So for me, I think it's about leaning into that piece in the meantime.
I love that perspective, especially that piece, actually building relationships when it comes to doing business. Because it's such a nice way to not only get to know your customer better, but actually meet peers you can work with, partner with, and even I don't know, find different ways of working together. That yeah, at the end of the day, no matter how advanced the technology is, and especially for some businesses, like you mentioned, like small businesses, it's hard for them to adopt the new technology, and probably indeed will take years for those. Now, of course, might be exception the growing businesses or mid-size and so on, but speaking of services and speaking of relationships, like how do you help your clients specifically? Like in which way you serve them? You mentioned one-on-one. I know you have also a boot camp. Can you expand more on those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off providing just, one-to-one done for you services. And those have evolved into include both done with you services and the boot camp. So, like I said, I started off with website copywriting, started launching into brand messaging strategy. And one of the things that happened is business owners were coming to me and they're saying, I really want to work with you, but your services aren't in my budget. Do you offer something else? And I'm very grateful that one of the first pieces of advice I ever got was listen to the market. So it's like, people are asking me for this. What can I do? So I created a done with you website package, which includes, I have a comprehensive workbook for them, but there's also strategy sessions on either end of that to make sure that they can implement well. And then I had a client say, well, do you do this for brand messaging too? And I was like, of course. So, of course I do. And so I created that really quickly. I beta tested that with a few people, and they all were like, this was amazing, but it was missing that support and accountability piece. And so that's where bootcamp was born. I mentioned earlier that I come from an education background, and I was like, I really should be leveraging that a little bit with what I'm doing. I have extensive experience with teaching, with creating courses. I've written curriculum before. So I turned it into a boot camp, and I sort of was thinking that was going to be a one-off thing. Let me do this boot camp and see how it goes, and maybe I'll launch it again next fall. We wrapped up about a month ago. And my participants were like, when are you doing this again? Because I know other business owners that I really think would benefit from doing this. And so, it sort of shifted to this. I think I'm going to start offering that twice a year. And the next cohort is actually going to be opening up pretty soon, because I reached out to people who had expressed interest before. And I was like, so, when do you think is a great date? I'm thinking maybe September. And they're like, can you do it now? So, I think that that's going to become a bigger piece of how I serve my clients, is these cohort type models where they are still getting adequate support from me, but also getting a chance to learn and grow with other businesses, helping them build relationships with other business owners as well. And then, what would be ideal is, of course, if that segues into one-to-one work for me later as well. I would love that. But I do have those variety of services. And so my favorite thing to do is really the one-to-one messaging and website copywriting for either clients or, one-on-one or small businesses. Because I really love just helping see that clarity, that confidence come to light. And I love working with businesses that are in that growth stage. We are evolving, and our messaging and our copywriting hasn't. That's been a really fun group of entrepreneurs to work with. And so I love helping them find confidence and clarity. But I still also want to be able to help the startups. And so that's why I have those done with you, and the other services as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And if someone wants to reach out, where they can engage with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn almost every day. That's a great place to connect with me. And also my email list, I send out every week. I send out actionable advice on brand messaging strategy, on copywriting, and I really consider that to be a community. I love, love, love hearing from my email subscribers. I'm the one who writes the email. I'm the one who replies to every email. And I've had some great conversations and built really good relationships just in that. So, my joining my email list, following me on LinkedIn, and then of course heading over to my website, which is getting a makeover, and so that will be updated in February. But those are the best places to find me.
Awesome. And I'll put the link in the show notes as well. And I want to conclude with something that you mentioned there about this hybrid approach, where you put the curriculum together, some helping materials, and having access to you as well. I think it's such a good way to not only scale, but as well offering that different way of helping others, not just the one-on-one. Because as you mentioned, some people might not have the budget to hire you one-on-one. And it's something that I'm a big fan of, because it's such a great way to help and impact more people in a positive way, rather than just sticking to, oh, I'll just offer exclusively one-on-one and I don't care about the rest. But that's actually, yeah, you're missing not only on potential revenue, but you're missing out on bigger long-term impact, because you work with them, you help them, and some of them might become one-on-one clients, right? And I wanted to point this out because some of those listening, I know they are struggling with this, and going from one-on-one to one-to-many or a hybrid model is such an underrated way. And I want to ask you something. Those that are still struggling with their brand messaging, what they can do in less than 1 week in order to improve that, if you were to put it in a step-by-step way?
I would say, I think voice of customer language is the most important thing that you can lean into. So if you had 1 week, I would take time to go back through whatever testimonials and reviews that you have, and to think about, what are my clients saying about how I helped them, what their problem was before. I would ask, if you don't have testimonials, go to your past clients and ask them for those testimonials and give them those questions. Hey, if you were happy with my services, or even if you weren't, I would love some feedback from you. Can you tell me, what was your problem? What were you trying to solve? What were some hesitations or concerns or objections you had before choosing to work with me? Why did you choose to work with me? What benefits, what outcomes did you have? What surprised you? And a question that I love to ask is, if someone was thinking about hiring me, but what was on the fence, what would you say to them? And so I would just go back to any past information that you have, scour that, look at your competitor sites, look at Reddit, all of those things that I mentioned. And also, if you go on LinkedIn on my featured section, I have all of this in a guide that you can download. That talks about sort of how to do all of these things and then how to use that language as well. But that's where I would start, because that you're at least speaking in the language that's going to connect with those most satisfying clients.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Stacy, for sharing this. And I'll make sure to put the guide as well in the show notes so they can get it out. And that's a super great challenge that someone can apply indeed in less than 1 week in order to get the ball rolling and become better at how they position themselves.
Absolutely. Yep. I always talk to your customer. That's my greatest piece of advice always.
If there's one big takeaway from this conversation, that's definitely one of them. Thank you so much, Stacy, for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You, yes, you're one of the few that stick to the end. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing so. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so below. And if you got any value from this, please share it with a friend. They might got some value from it as well. Thank you so much, and until next week, Pura Vida!